Om Samartha Sadguru Sri Sai Nathaya Namaha. Sri Tajudeen Baba Charitra, English version. In the recent history of both Islamic and Hindu mysticism of India, 1861 to 1925, Hazrat Baba Tajudeen Auliya of Nagapur has been one of the most outstanding mystics of his time. He was most intimately loved and rather worshipped by both the Hindus and the Muslims of his highly amazing spiritual powers and universal benedictions enjoyed by millions of the suffering humanity. It is a great pity that nobody cared to publish his exemplary life story and marvelous deeds ever since his disappearance from the scene of this world. I think it is his own spiritual blessing that I am inspired to publish his biographical sketch in these pages in order to preserve the glorious history of India's innumerable spiritual redeemers, to uphold the eternal dignity of all ancient religions. Descent and birth. The ancestors of Tajudeen Baba were Arabs. Sayyid Abdullah, a grandson of Hazrat Imam Askari, came from Arabia to India and settled down in Madras. The descendants of his family thus happened to live around this city for a long time. One of them, Sayyid Badruddin, became a Subedar in the army, Madras platoon number 32, and lived in Kamptee. He married Mariam B., the daughter of one Sheikh Miran Sahib. Sayyid Badruddin had a son born on Thursday, the 27th of January 1861, at about 5:15 a.m. at Kamptee, and he was named Tajudeen. But they were shocked to see that the newly born child did not cry as usual. They feared it was stillborn child, and according to the prevalent custom, branded the child on his forehead and the temples. The child then cried for only a little while, but almost immediately stopped and kept gazing intently in all directions. The marks of that branding remained forever on the forehead and temples of the pious child. Death of parents. Hardly had the child completed 1 year when his father Sayyid Badruddin passed away, and when he was 9 years old, his mother also died. The orphan was then brought up and educated at his mother's house by his grandmother. He was admitted in a school at the age of 6. Up to the age of 18, he studied Arabic, Persian, and English. Divine blessing. In his 6th year, when Tajudeen was at school in Kamptee, a famous Muslim saint, Hazrat Abdullah Shah, whose tomb is now adjoining the railway station at Kamptee, came to see him. He gazed at Tajudeen, took out a piece of sweet meat from his bag, chewed a bit of it, and thrust the rest into Tajudeen's mouth. He then told one of the teachers standing by, "What can you teach him? He is already well taught in his previous life." And addressing the young Tajudeen, he said, "Eat little, sleep little, and talk little. While reading Holy Quran, read as though the Holy Prophet Muhammad has descended upon you." This strange incident effected a profound change in Tajudeen. Tears flowed from his eyes continuously for 3 days, and he lost all interest in play and childish pranks. He sought solitude and was always found reading the works of great Sufi saints and reflecting upon their profound significance. Of all that he read, the one couplet that captured his heart most was, "Drink wine, burn Quran and Kaaba, dwell in Mandap temple, but never hurt the feelings of or cause pain to any human heart." Hazrat Abdullah Shah was a Sufi dervish, a Muslim mystic. Neither he nor the Sufi mystic who wrote the above lines could hardly have meant these lines literally. It must be remembered that they are meant quite differently from what they appear outwardly. The commonest examples are the use of terms of drinking, lovemaking, and intoxication in their poetry to connote mystical experiences. So, the above lines actually meant that one has to drink the wine of true and sincere devotion and faith, and not the dirty wine of worldly life. That the Holy Quran is neither the parchment or the ink in which it is inscribed, nor the Holy Kaaba the stone, nor is it right to be caught in the narrow religious bigotry of hating other religions, like belittling places of worship of other religions as the Hindu mandaps. The most important of all is the non injury of the body or the religious feelings and sentiments of any human being. Indeed, Tajudeen's spiritual career had been an unwritten, unuttered commentary on these lines. When he became the full-fledged Tajudeen Auliya, he ordered equal treatment of both the Hindus and the Muslims, as his story proves. Military service. For all outward signs, nothing of significance happened in the life of Tajudeen for the next 12 years. In his 18th year, River Kamhan near Kamti was in furious floods, and the house of his uncle was badly damaged. Young Tajudeen was deeply touched at the sight of the flood victims. Owing to the consequent loss, his uncle Hazrat Abdul Rahman was compelled to work in the forest office for a living, and he also advised his nephew to join the army. Accordingly, at the age of 20 in 1881 AD, Tajudeen joined the 13th Nagapur regiment. In the course of his army duties, Tajudeen travelled extensively in the country and was also sent out to foreign countries like France, etc. On its return, the regiment camped at the grass farm in Hyderabad, Deccan. There, an American officer, Mr. Benz, came into contact with Tajudeen, who taught him the Holy Quran. Another military officer, Mr. William, was a bosom friend of Tajudeen, in whose company he advanced in spirituality. Later, Mr. William went to live in Calcutta, where his tomb can be seen even today in the graveyard at Bangmeri. Meets a Chishti saint. In 1884, Tajudeen's regiment reached Saugar. All through his career in the army, Tajudeen never neglected his namaz, Muslim prayer. One day in Saugar, Tajudeen was lured by a melodious voice which led him to a lonely wasteland nearby where a famous Chishti saint, Hazrat Dawood Shah, lived. Henceforth, he used to attend regularly to the service of this Muslim saint. He used to spend much of his time in meditation in the company of the saint every day after his army duties. Sometimes he stayed away with him in the night also. When his grandmother learnt at Kamti that he was not staying in his tent at night, she rushed to Saugar, suspecting that Tajudeen had fallen into some evil company. She stealthily followed him at night, but found that he was meditating with a Muslim saint. Next morning, when Tajudeen returned home, she served him with breakfast. But Tajudeen said he would eat his own laddu and peda, 2 Indian sweets, and started chewing up the 2 stones he had in his hand. The old lady was awfully surprised at this phenomenon and realized that Tajudeen's devotional life had given him some divine powers, and that her suspicions about his character were wrong. She returned to her town happily. Even after Hazrat Dawood Chishti's death, Tajudeen continued his meditations and mujahidas, spiritual practices, often near the deceased's tomb. Tajudeen's meeting with Hazrat Dawood Chishti marked the second important landmark in his life. His meditations and mujahidas soon became more intensified, and he found his job in the army a great hindrance to his new life. And so he tendered his resignation directly to his commander. The latter was, however, shocked and at once wrote to his relatives about his rash action. His grandmother, fearing that Tajudeen had become mentally cracked, came to Saugar and found him quite a different man, wandering unaware of his worldly needs and responsibilities as if in a quest of something intangible. She took him to Kamti, where the doctors tried to cure him for madness and magicians used all kinds of talismans in vain. They could not realize that by the grace of God and attention of his Guru, he had attained the high mystical state of all existence, in which one forgets self. But the people generally took him for a madman. Children flocked around him and threw stones at him. But he always smiled and was never offended with them. On the contrary, he encouraged them by heaping the stones they needed in one place, ready for their use. If people dissuaded the children from stoning him, he would get angry with them for their interference. Tajudeen lived in this state for 4 years in Kamti, during which period his grandmother died, unaware of the glorious future of her grandson. Now his uncle Abdul Rahman took him to Chenda. There too he was treated in vain for his madness, and he was sent back to Kamti and left to his own fate. He lived under bridges and in ruins, caring little for sun and rain. When it rained, he stood under some tree or the other. Now he was completely naked and hardly had any inclination for food or drink. When anyone gave him anything to eat, he gave it away to the stray dogs on the road. At last, when every human being abandoned Tajudeen, the hand of the Lord was stretched to shield him. Now miracles started manifesting themselves through him, and this made the people realize the real stuff of which Tajudeen was made. Hundreds of these miracles were narrated by the amazed public, and now he was popularly called Tajudeen Baba. Let us see a few of these amazing miracles. An amazing prediction. One day, Tajudeen Baba briskly walked to the house of a goldsmith in Kamti and told him, "Vacate your building, remove your belongings as soon as you can." The goldsmith, who had already heard of the Baba and revered him, immediately obeyed his order. The same night, the building collapsed. The goldsmith and his family were saved, and they became Baba Tajudeen's staunch devotees. Food in the box. On another occasion, Tajudeen Baba walked to the door of a good man and asked for food. "There is no food at this hour, Baba," the man replied. But the Baba would not budge and said, "Why do you utter lies? You have kept the food in the box." The man, who had already heard of Baba's extraordinary powers, went in and searched the box. To his astonishment, he did find some food in the box, although none had been put there to the very best of his memory. His reputation spreads. News of Tajudeen Baba's miraculous powers spread like wildfire, and crowds always thronged around him, seeking his blessings for each and every kind of their wishes and endeavors. When such a miraculous help becomes so easily obtainable and does not cost anything in return, it is human nature to lose sight of the sublimity that underlies it. Instead of steadily rising to dignity and success with self-help and sacrifice, man seeks to pull it down to the level of his myriad cravings, both worthy and unworthy. When such a mentality prevails in the crowds, a perfect saint is forced to limit his accessibility to only those who have the germ of craving for spirituality development, which can be sparked by the manifestation of his divine powers, while he only denied the same to those who seek to witness them just to satisfy their ideal curiosity. And the perfect saint has always an unerring and uncanny insight into these aspects of the seeker's personalities and propensities. The Baba goes to the lunatic asylum. Accordingly, at one stage, Tajudeen Baba got fed up with this unworthy demand for miracles, and one day he declared, "Tomorrow I shall enter the lunatic asylum." And next day he did what he said. But the way he did it was very strange and funny. Next day at dawn, Tajudeen Baba stood stark naked in front of the European Ladies' Tennis Club. The English ladies naturally got enraged at his unbecoming conduct and approached the police to put him in the lunatic asylum in Nagapur. And the order was accordingly issued by the district magistrate of County Cantonment on 26th of August 1892 AD. However, it soon became evident that Tajudeen the madman could never be, because sometimes when he was locked up in cell, he could be found wandering freely on the roads of Nagpur. In the register of the asylum, the age of Tajudeen Baba at the time of his admission was recorded as 32 years, 7 months and 9 days. European ladies surprised. A few days after he was put by the police in the asylum, the English ladies, whose wrath had earned Tajudeen Baba this reward, saw him walking on the road towards his house at Kamti. They suspected some intrigue on the part of the police about their complaint. They proceeded straight to the asylum to blame the police for setting the mad fakir free. But their amazement knew no bounds when they found that he was not let off but was very much in the cell, securely locked up in the asylum. This, however, was not to be a stray incident or the only one of the kind reported of Tajudeen Baba's strange powers. At that time, the chief doctor of the asylum was Dr. Abdul Majid. One night, when he went around the hospital, he found that while all other lunatics were locked up in their cells, Tajudeen Baba was loitering in the veranda of the cell. The doctor quietly went to the attendant on duty and took him to task for his negligence for leaving that one lunatic free. But the surprised attendant assured Dr. Abdul Majid that he did lock in every lunatic securely. He personally led the doctor to the particular cell of Baba Tajudeen to prove his claim. Dr. Abdul Majid was stunned to see that this time Tajudeen Baba was inside the cell, securely locked up. This miraculous incident convinced the doctor of the real nature of Baba Tajudeen's madness, and henceforth Dr. Abdul Majid lived only as his devotee, seeking his blessings and guidance in everything he did. Later on, his experiences of Baba's divine powers were numerous. We shall relate just a few of these experiences also.